Okay, so here we are going to talk about magazines this morning, and there are two people in our groups. One is me, Xu Yiwei, and this is my partner, Wang Yixin. And here, let's go to the next page. So, okay, the first part we'll talk about is the history of magazine publishing. And so, as we all know, the Gutenberg is the one who invented the movable printing press, and so it's not real to us that Europe have lived the way of the magazine publishing, because when we need to publish the magazine for a large range, the printing machine and the technology is very important. And so the first true magazine is that it is in German, and when it translates to English, it means Edifying Monthly Discussions. It was published in Germany from 1663 and 1668. And you can see that the red arrow in the map is the Germany, and then after Germany published the magazine, soon many countries adapted this format and published for a larger range and have their own magazines. And Britain is one of the countries that follow them. The Great Britain closely followed the continental in Europe in early 1700s. Let's see. We can see that Europe popularized the format of magazine, and then British emerged during the 18th century, a little bit later than the continental Europe. And also, here I want to talk is with the arrival of the 18th century, there came an increase in literacy. Literacy means that the people have the ability to read, to write, and to understand others, to encode the things on the books. And so that was also the time that women enjoyed a considerable rise in the literacy. So it's not strange that we can say there appears magazine written especially for women. It calls the Athenaeum Mercury. It appeared in 1693 and it's in London. That was the great development of magazine, and it also happened in British. So after that, we'll come to the American magazines. The picture I'm showing you is the Saturday Evening Post. It's the first truly successful mass circulation magazine. In fact, in the 1740s, early American magazines have already appeared. But there was a problem that they couldn't circulate for a very large range, and it wasn't very successful because they was to struggle with low readership, high publishing costs, and high distribution costs. So they are only able to just publish in the region that really they do it only in a very small area, and by the end of 1700s, just about 40 or 50 years, the things have completely changed. More than 100 magazines had appeared in the United States. That was the huge step that American magazines has go beyond. And here I want to talk about is something very interesting fact that I found it, and it shows that the magazine is shaped by the culture where it developed. You can see that on the left side is the Youth Companion. It was the magazine published mainly for youth from 1827 to 1929. It's about something fairly religious content, and it encouraged readers to be virtuous and pious. In a word, it just encouraged the young men to obey the rules that the Christian religion that tell them, and learn to behave properly. And on the right side is a Chinese magazine called New York. I think a our classmate from China is not is very familiar to it. And we know it's about democracy and science. You can see the content of these two magazines, both are yours, but the contents are very different, because that when it was in China, it was in the early 20th century. We can see that China is transforming from monarchy to republic, and during this progress, many people are not enlightened, and so the target of to publish this magazine to the youth is to open mind, and to especially to the youth to let them know the world out of China, to know the progress both in technology and also the to do with the democracy that happens like in America and in Europe, that they don't have someone who's ruling them, only one man, but they are having people that are ruling themselves. But in America, you can see that they have established a very relatively stable polity, so that their main aim, it wasn't about democracy and science. It's about more to make teenagers to behave in a proper way. And also, there has been a press decree that attract larger audiences. As we all know, in the 1830s, that was the penny press, which appeared. We know that last week, and that was a time when newspaper only sold for 1 penny, and so magazine is something is much more complex than newspaper. So it's not it's strange that it's not be a little later that price of the magazine decreases. You can see when such as the Youth Companion I show you, it was sold for 25 to 35 cents. But when it comes to 1890s, then there was the first decrease in price. For the McClear's magazine, it only sold for 15 cents, and then for 10 cents for the monthly. You may ask, how do they decrease the price? Actually, it works in the way like this: that actually the magazine is sold for less than the cost to produce. So you may ask, then how do they gain profit from it? It's because there was a circulation that if they decrease the price and later they will circulate more and more people will read it, and then there will be a larger space for advertisers to advertise their products, and they will pay the fees for the advertisement. And so the people will read more, and they will influence the people's choice of purchasing products. And then advertisers are willing to put more money on the magazine advertising, and then the price of it will decrease and they will circulate more. You see, it is a circle that it empowers the magazines to be cheaper and to publish more. And here is the statistics. You can see that from 1893 to 1899, just in 6 years, the circulation of the monthly has tripled from 250,000 to 750,000, and it was very astonishing. And when it come to early 20th century, there also were some developments emerged by technology. Basically, you can see from that the communication technology was improved, such as telegraph, telephone, radios, and this makes the news magazines appear. Time, you can see, is still publishing, and I think you can also read it in our library. They have copies of that. And also Forbes is well known for its list. Every year they publish a list of the richest man. They have the money, and also the Newsweek. These are very influential magazines in American publishing industry now. And to explain more about the news magazine here, I want to take Time as an example. Well, Times basically have 4 parts. The first part is briefing. It's about some major news events. The second part is called the veil. The veil is something is larger articles and includes a cover story. Yes, you see on the cover you may see a photo of a figure or some celebrity, and in the veil part they will talk more about the person and maybe some things that has happened on them. And the third part is called Life. It's about science, health, technology, environment, and such. And the fourth part is about arts. Sometimes something about theater, literature, and also music, architectures. So that is the basic component of Time, and I think this also applies for many other similar news magazines. And also on the right side, we can see it's picture magazines. This will develop thanks to the improved photo technology. After we can take photograph in a better mood, and we can print it in the colorful mood. And there appears some picture magazines such as Life, Look, Focus, and Take. I'm sorry that the Life has only published not for very long, but 36 years. But during the 36 years, Life was very influential, and we can see that Life is emerged the other picture magazines to appear, and is considered a very important magazines in the publishing industry. So let's come to the role of magazines in the development of American popular culture. So the first one is advertising for national market. As I mentioned about that, after they advertised, they were able to publish the magazines for a larger brand, and advertising also increases. And in the late 19th century, there was an increase in the mass circulation. But in addition to the obvious benefit of advertising expenses, that also brings introduction of national trends. Because magazines are publishing for a larger range, that many people are reading the same articles and they are seeing the same advertisement. That was when many people are reading more, so sometimes they are thinking more likely. And when people are thinking in a very similar way, there appears the culture. This was the thing that pushes the American popular culture to come out and to go further. And when talks about popular literature in magazines, I think many of you are very familiar with these two people. It's Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway. I think many of them many of you have already read such as Tom Sawyer's and The Old Man and the Sea. Well, in fact, these books are all published on the magazines in the American history. The larger range of the publishing of magazine have offered a place for authors and other poets to publish their works on the magazine. So many more people are able to read their stories not only on the books, and they can read it on the magazines. Also, magazines will actively to hire some new and also established writers and to help them to write for them. And this is this become a part that attracts many readers. It allows readers to have a taste of available literature in the trend. And an interesting fact is that The Old Man and the Sea even publish on the magazine in full before it published on the books. So many people has already read it on the in full on the magazines before reading it on the books. And in the 20th century, there are also there's something about the entertainment magazines. The first one I will introduce is the pop magazine. It's not pop, it's pop. It means, so what does pop mean? It actually is it used to describe the paper. You see, the paper it is so basically this kind of magazine is using the very rough paper to publish, and they will decrease the cost. And the rough paper is called pop, and so the pop magazine are about all fiction publications, and it started as adventure magazines, but then diverged into several categories such as love, detective, and western. In fact, on the about can say is something about a little strange, or something is imaginary that attracts people. On the left side, it was detective comics. You can see the Batman on the cover page. Actually, detective comics is where the Batman first appeared. That was I think where the Batman was born, and it printed. You can see it printing comics, and although it is aimed for the teenagers, later on they want to attract more adults. They began to publish something about violent and horror comics, and that with a lot of arguments. Some people think this will affect the teenagers and will lead them to commit crime. But sometimes they think they are not that serious and they are just for fun. Actually, when the pop magazine really increases is when the about the 30s of 20th century. That was a time when the Great Depression appears. I assume you all know the Great Depression it was the time when it happens in 1929 and maybe continue until 1934 or something. It was time when you all heard of some Black Friday, right? It's a time when the stock of American they dropped in a dramatic way. It's like all the economics of America. It was established on something as it was on as balloon or something that was popped in the 30s of the 20th century or popped, and many people were unemployed and they don't have jobs. And that was the time when it was a gloomy atmosphere that not only the American people saw in, but all a large part of the world. And that time, people really need some fictional heroes to amuse them and to let them gain hope. And so the pop magazine become very popular now. And also, the success of pop magazines encouraged other magazines like teen magazines, fan magazines, and celebrity magazines. This was aimed for specific people and will amuse themselves, such as the fan of adults and many so on. In the 20th century that television, film, music become very common and popular in America, so there comes many idols. The adults and people were wanting to know more about them, so they have these magazines for this purpose. Okay, Then we will talk about the major publications in magazine industry. Here I will give you some examples and a brief introduction of them. The first is high circulation magazines. These are the three highest US circulations among contemporary magazines: the AARP, the magazine, AARP Bulletin, and Reader's Digest. You may ask, so what is AARP? It is so powerful that it can take place of even the first two magazines in the high circulation. The fact is, AARP represents the American Association of Retired Peoples. Yeah, it is for the retired peoples, and it has more than 40 million members in the association. So the first two magazines are automatically sent to their members. So you know why they are publishing a large amount. And ARP, the magazine, is basically about some lifestyle articles to tell the elderly, to tell the senior citizens how they will live and to be healthy and to live in a peaceful mood. And the second one, the ARP Bulletin, is about news story of interest and some important social issues. In fact, what bulletin mean in newspaper is a brief, prominently featured newspaper account based upon information received just before the edition went to press. So you see, the stories are traditionally sometimes a bit short, and they are news that happens just before the publication of the magazines. And the third one is Reader's Digest. Digest means a short written paragraph providing the most important parts of a larger piece of writing or one containing written news. So it provides a summary of reading. And this was established by husband and wives. The Reader's Digest are only about pocket size. It was very small and easy for you to carry it with you. At first, none of the publishers was willing to publish this, but the couples who invented this magazine thought it will be a success, and eventually it come out that they were true. And the next part is about women's magazines. You can see women have been an important role since 19th century. In that time, it was traditional part of. It was considered that women is traditionally not part of the workforce. So the publishers think they have more time for leisure, and surely this has changed a lot for the last few hundred years. And many magazines have changed the context of them to apply for larger runs, not only for magazines, but there are magazines that are insisting that they're only published for the women's, and some of them are very successful. You can see there is the Ladies' Home Journal, Better Homes, and Cosmopolitan. Basically, they are about stories of marriages and health, gardening, lifestyles, and also on the right side is Female. Female is one of Malaysia's top-selling fashion and beauty magazines. The Female and the kind of Cosmopolitan is about some fashion styles, beauty, fitness, and self-improvement. So it changed the idea that women are only for the house jobs and to take care of their husband or children. That women can be beautiful and they can show their lifestyle and so show their attitude. And here comes the celebrity magazines. Basically, celebrity magazines is about some features or some information about some famous icons or popular celebrity. The three the more very influential of them are People, OK, and US Weekly. Although there are a lot about facts about the celebrities, there is some little differences between them. You can see for the People, it states that it avoids pure Hollywood stories and they will check the facts before it was published. So to some extent, People has a better fame, and celebrities are sometimes willing to cooperate with them and provide some information to them other than to the other magazines. And for the OK, this is something interesting that even I don't have to get it from other materials. I can tell from my experience that when I searched the OK online, and I found that it was especially about something about baby, pregnant, wedding, and divorce. It focuses on that, and in fact, it is true because this magazine focuses on the exclusive interview of pregnancy and engagement. And for the US Weekly, this magazine contains some parts interesting that because who wore the best. It's about some celebrities. They wore the same clothes and photograph, take a picture of them, and they have the readers of the magazine to make a poll, like to vote for them, who is wearing it in a better way, who is looking better in the same clothes. And this achieved a circulation of about 2 million in December 2010. It prides itself as being a leader in the celebrity magazines. So here I'd like to show you. I'd like to show you a short video to let you. It's sometimes kind of not working.
Trying to get it short in time anyway. I wonder if we can just take that link and put it on Moodle and let people watch it on their own.
Okay. So, sorry, we can't watch this video for now. And the next part will pass it to my partner. He will introduce some more about the coming future and development in the 21st century.
Okay. It seems like time is not enough, and I will talk as quickly as I can. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the last 3 sections of this chapter. And 5.4, how magazines control the public's access to information. To solve this problem, I divide the answer to 2 parts. The first is the way magazines control information. It means that they need some fundamental condition that they can control that. And the next is the direction they lead reader to. Okay, the way magazine control information, like newspaper industry, the magazine industry dictates not only which story gets told, also how those stories are presented. In general, the format of most magazines allows for a more in-depth discussion of a topic than is possible in the relatively constrained space available in newspapers. In fact, all owners of media have some ability to control the access to information. So when we talk about the magazine's control, I want to make a comparison between it and its brother newspapers. Most large newspapers, such as the Washington Post or Los Angeles Times, generally camps even their longest article at 1,000 words. And let's see the magazines. Magazines, however, frequently allow for double that word count when publishing articles of great interest in double 2,000 words. learns, however, varies from magazines to magazine and story to story. And next, I will show you a table. This one is a extra contents is not appeared in the textbook, but I think it's very important, and it appeared in other academic books. You can see this table. It's about a release cycle. The Times and Daily News, they are newspapers. They will be published every day. And China Philatelic News in China, it's newspapers, and it will be published 3 times every week. And in New York, it is a Malaysia local magazines. It will be published per month, and the Triple Life Weekly, it's per week. Because longer term of production and more space to tell, editor of magazines can filter information more carefully than newspapers. Okay, let's talk about the second part. The first is choice to publish. Just as newspapers do, magazines control which stories reach the public by deciding which articles to include in their publication. At least it proves that the information we see can be controlled by people. And now we ask, who controls this information? And the first is editorial leaning. Each magazine has its own editorial slant, which helps determine which story get published and how those stories are presented. As you know, if you want to publish your article in a magazine, you send your article to them. You must read the magazine's contents before. You should know what is the style of this magazine, and you'll change your style to coordinate with them. And the editor, which all articles have common styles, so it can establish the figure to all the readers. And if they like the feeling when they read the magazines, they will come back and buy it again. And the next is advertisers' influence. Magazines derived approximately half of their income from advertisers. With advertisement price driving the magazine industry, many publications are forced to satisfy advertisers by avoiding potential controversial sales. It is easy to understand. If you are a business, you will wish the advertisement on magazines, and you wish the media will show more praise of your goods. But if you will advise the men you support, the magazines you support, don't show the controversial information of your goods. And this is a conclusion. How magazine control public access to information. First is the format. I see the words count in limitation. The next is choice to publish. Third is influence of advertiser. And the fourth is the editorial tendency. In fact, this page is come from the supponent's page, supponent PowerPoints. And there's another point named online magazines. But I think the online magazine is a concept which is parallel to the traditional paper magazine. So I think it can't be said here. And I must to mention it because it is appearing in the textbook, and it says that the online magazines compared to the traditional magazines, it is more outgoing, and the cost of it will be less. So the power of its control will be less than the traditional magazine. Okay, let's come to the 5.5 specialization of magazines. Over the last century, magazines have slowly moved into more specialized fragments groupings. It is the way magazines to survive when new media have many great advantages in markets. Every day you look at your smartphone, or you can also get information from the PC, the laptop, and even the more powerful television today. But it's not everybody want to buy a magazine from the bookstore and read it on the desk. So when today there is a big impact the technology give the impact on magazines. And the transformation aims to attract specific people, continuous attention. I'll explain that in the next page. Through gathering groups of specific people, advertisers can offer more targeted advertisements relevant to these people's same interesting and characters, and they can save cost. If you have a magazine and you give the pure information about one field, you will get so many people who are interested in such information. And in this time, the advertisement is also relevant to this field. They can give the advertisement more aimly, and everyone get information, maybe will react to this information. So it will be more effective. So become professional can attract advertisers because it can attract more people. And next, I'll give you some examples of the specialized magazine. The first is a professional trade publication. Nearly every trade group produces some sort of a professional publication for its member. Through such magazines, members can get relevant knowledge and important information in time on magazines. When I was in high school, my English teacher told me don't use my the electric device to search for the words I don't know, because if I input the words letter by letter, I just can see only one outcomes in the device. But if I open up my dictionary, I will see in the same page I will see some other words and I can get more information. This is the same principle. If a green grocer in a field, you can get more information which is beyond your daily work, and you can develop your skill very fast. And the second is the hobby and interest magazines. The character of these magazines is that the advertisements are very effective. Today there's a phenomenon that named fans economic. If you love something or love somebody, idol, you would like to buy something relevant to them, such as the soccer. And the third is work. I think it is very presentative of the as a magazine. It make up to business of fashionable clothing, and we can conclude a positive cycle that the magazine want to earn money from wig companies, clothing companies, and the clothing companies want to publicize and sell their clothing to people. And people now today, they run after the fashion, so they want more information about work. They want to get new work information from magazines, so all of them can get a profit from this cycle. And fourth, the pop and genre fiction magazines. One such example is Asimov Science Fiction, a science fiction magazine founded in 1977 and still popular today. Isaac Asimov wants to provide a home for the new science fiction writers, a new magazine that young writers could break into. In fact, today, the wish Asimov wants, the wish Asimov have is not restricted on the SF or detective fiction. It has expanded to all of the arts. And if you're a new writers in a field, you can have, in the past time, you can see so many writers can't be recognized by the publisher and publisher. So they achieved in a very old age. But today, the new writers could publish their essay on these magazines using the right the short essay, and it will cost less risk for publishers. Next is scholarly publication. It is a very important sort of magazines to let the scientists and the researchers communicate their thinking and their concepts. But it is also a very different member in all types of magazines. Most of the scholarly magazines have no advertisement and claim themes from the author. As you know, if you run a normal magazines, you can correct the grammar faults or there's some paragraph using the attitude there's something you don't like and you can delete it or change it into what you want. But if you're editor of scholarly publications, you will find that the authors, meaning you can't understand what is that. They will come out some very creative and use some very hard theory you do know. So you must request somebody more professional to test is the theory right or is the concept can be accepted. So you need to pay some money for this. And moreover, the reader of such magazines will be less than the normal magazines. So you can get so many money from selling. So you must take fee from the author. And the next two is magazines for political groups and religious groups. I don't have enough information about them. And let's go into the 5.6, the influence of the internet on the magazines industry. Respective food magazines published since 1941, terminated October 2009 by the publisher called Nest. You can see the pictures about Gourmet. It's a very famous food magazines in West. But the day it has over, it can only stay in people's memory. And I have said that there's a very big impact from the new technology, new media to the magazines. The advent of online news resources have somewhat lessened the control that magazines have over information. And because of the network, the control of information will be lessened. And the magazines must adapt to internet, run on the internet. There's two aspects. That one way is they can sell the magazines on internet. You can buy the magazine directly on the internet and they will send it to your home. And the next is just transform the paper magazine to a digital information, and you can read the magazine directly on the internet. Next is my video, and it's also can work. I have a try.
Okay, why don't we'll go ahead and put this on Moodle. Encourage you to watch it.
Okay, next, return back to my open.
So last but not least, you can have a look at the magazine organizational structure. It's sometimes similar to the newspaper structure, but they definitely have some columns and features. The left one is consumer magazine for people like us, is more commonly, and the right one is trade magazine, is for academic and for professionals. So they have some difference. You can have a look of it later on. So here comes our question time. The first question is that which of the following is not the problem faced by the first magazines published in America? Does anyone know the answer? I think it's very easy. Yeah, it is B. Not too many readers, but too less. There aren't enough readers with little time to read. And and the second one, when did the 10-cent magazine first appeared? Does anybody remember? In fact, it's not. I'm not encouraging you to remember just 1890. I want to know that it was penny press that first appeared in 1830s, and magazines is later than the penny press. So it must be 1890s. And the third one, which of the following first gave teens the opportunity to read popular James fiction in cheap magazines? Any answer? you can see that it's about fiction and in cheap magazines, so it must be the answer B. This is a trick that is, I said, teens. The pop magazines are also about teens, and the answer is not teen magazines. And then I will pass to my partner.
Okay, the fourth question is about the word count. Is there somebody know? How many words magazines generally allow for most when publishing articles of great interest? You can select two, one more. Defang, I see you laughing. What is that? Okay, the answer is B and D. It's 2,000 words and just the double of newspapers. And the fifth, who are able to control which information is presented and which is hidden according to contents before. It's also, you can select two or more. Okay, the answer is B and C. And next is, please choose all reasons why specialization of magazines appeared according to the tense before. I tell you that there's three answers. The first, struggle to survive from impact of newer media. And B is employed by professional groups. C is readers hate to various information. D, editors don't have enough knowledge to deal with more. And E, it can attract special group readers. And F is, it can attract advertisers. Okay, the answer is A, E, F. They're not deployed by professional groups. And the readers, is not every readers hit the various information. Somebody maybe like so many information about different field. Okay. Now,
So that's all of our presentation today, and thank you all. This is our references.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned we'll put those videos online, and you can anticipate that there will be some questions based on them. So along with any videos that I put online, there could be questions on your quizzes based on any videos that I put online. I do expect to put on several really short videos. I may have time to show them today, but I don't have as much time anymore now that you guys are presenting. So my videos may also go on Moodle in order to, again, get you some more information that I think you need. Let me, I guess at this point, just make a couple of quick comments. I mean, about the presenters did a good job. They kept eye contact and expressed themselves well. I think with it's now almost exactly 10. That means I have 50 minutes left for everything I want to say. So try to tighten up a little bit. We had a little bit a late start, but that's one reason why I had them hold off the videos, is that that would be maybe another 10 minutes, and then I wouldn't have very much time at all. So 50 minutes, aim at about 50 minutes per presentation, which then gives me just a little more time to both talk about the presentation and to present other information that I might want to present. So try to watch the time. And indeed, it is part of the number 4 criteria, not just being ready on time, but also your timing of it. If you get too long, it could actually cost you points rather than helping you. It doesn't usually, but I remember one from my previous university where the guy went on and on and on and on, and he started off with an A and he ended up with a B, I think, at least, because he just didn't stop talking. So it could hurt you. I don't think there's any penalty today, but just be aware. It is possible to actually lose points by talking too much. Probably won't happen, but it could be. There's one of the discussions. You hopefully will notice that a lot of the ways that magazines control information is the same as newspapers. Agenda setting, which means what stories do you print, what stories don't you print. Magazines don't have as many stories. They may have longer stories, but they don't typically have as many as a newspaper. So they control it. The control is a little bit different. The impact of it is a little bit different. If a newspaper, which is coming out every day, for example, there was a study done recently that showed that, I may have mentioned before, that in the last quarter, 91% of the stories about Trump were negative. That's a lot of control. 91%. If you hit people day after day after day, and almost all of your stories about a certain person or a certain issue are negative, 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 it has to have impact. That I've never seen that before in my life, which is like I'm about as old as Adam, right? And so I've never seen anything like what's happening to Trump. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve some of it. He does suffer from foot and mouth disease, but I've never seen such a biased press either. So I've seen both. They're both two sides of the story, but 91% is huge. I've never heard anything anywhere like that. There have been scientific studies I may have mentioned before of showing the news coverage between the liberal candidates, the Democratic candidates in America, and the conservative Republican candidates in America. And over the last 20 years, it's been pretty much 2 to 1, twice as many favorable stories to the Democrats and half as many negative stories to the Democrats. So that's also a demonstration of the liberal bias in American media. And that's also substantiated by which party they affiliate with, who they donate money to, and there's a number of studies that show that ongoing bias in many different ways. So that actually the magazines showed their bias before newspapers did, because they weren't expected to be objective. In American universities, when I was young, they were always teaching objectivity. Be objective, be objective, be objective. But I think starting about not long after I graduated, but with Watergate, where suddenly they turned on the President of the United States then and got him to resign from office. With that, we went into that interpretive age that we were talking about last week, or you could almost interpretive, but also I would put / investigative. And in my own interviews with investigative reporters, award-winning investigative reporters, their conclusion was that they have to come to a conclusion. They can't be unbiased. If they feel like they have enough information on somebody, they can't be unbiased. They have to nail that sucker. They have to put him in jail if they can. Well, that's good as long as you're sure you're right. As long as you are absolutely sure that the evidence you have indicates that. But I think we've gone to the point where interpretive is so far off of objective that basically you're just digging up enough dirt that you hope that you can convince people that you're right. That doesn't mean that's not quite the same as actually proving that somebody, providing enough proof that somebody will go to jail is a little bit higher evidence than just basically killing their reputation. So, I think we may have gone too far, but I'm just saying that in the setting of, like, my research for my master's thesis, I purposely chose to look at special interest magazines that did openly announce their slant, conservative or liberal slant. Because I wanted to compare them to the general journalist and see if they were less open to new ideas, if they were more biased in different ways. And I didn't find a lot of different rigidity. I called it rigidity of their thinking. They were just about as open to different ideas as each other, and their opinionation was about as strong. That's where I had them predict the future and then say how strongly they believed they were right. It was not too different. The special interest magazine just a little bit more convinced that they were right than the general interest journalist. But it was just kind of the culture of American journalism that you were supposed to be objective. So they at least tried to sound objective, which they no longer do. So during that period of time, the magazines felt free to not be objective. The newspapers did not feel free not to sound objective. And so for many years, even when they were not objective, they tried to sound objective. Now I think it's kind of a farce. They're nowhere close to being objective. Okay. I think I might show a video. It's a very quick video, or maybe not even show all of it. Let me just, before I do that though, the idea of a special interest magazine now, during my lifetime, the number of magazines in the world, and in America specifically, has erupted. Just lots and lots and lots more magazines. And part of that is because they have become more specialized, and they have targeted their audiences. And all the reasons this team presented are absolutely accurate. Is that when you target your audience, you also target your advertisers, and that it can be very effective if you have a large advertising base. Now, there's a magazine. One of the videos I will probably put up on Moodle. The guy mentions that there's a magazine just about water. That's the subject of the entire magazine, water. So some of the specialties are, it's hard for me to even understand how they can make a lot of money with the subject, a special interest subject of water. I mean, yes, bottled water, water purifiers. I'm not exactly sure how big a market they have for their advertising in that. But the extreme that we've gone to special interest magazines is rather amazing. You can see, however, on the other hand, when you have a magazine like Vogue that is just about clothing, basically, well, now that's a big market. And so you could see that surviving a long time because of the size of its advertising, the number of advertisers that would want to be in their magazine. Back in, I think it was about 2000, and might have still been in 2009, maybe 2010, when I was in Kazakhstan during our Great Recession period. We invited a publisher of a local special interest magazine. It was just, to my knowledge, just in the city of Almaty, Kazakhstan. Almaty is by far the largest city in Kazakhstan, about 2 million people. And anyway, their way, it also ties in, by the way, how you distribute. So in the case of this specialty magazine, it was all about looking beautiful. And so a lot about cosmetics and stuff. Maybe they also had some in clothing, but basically looking beautiful. I don't remember the name of it. It was probably in Russian anyway. And their way of distribution was they didn't sell it. They simply took it out to all the beauty salons, all the hair salons, the beauty salons, and maybe nail salons, whatever, salons where women would be sitting around waiting for their appointment or their turn to become beautified. And they put a bunch of magazines there so the women could take them if they wanted to. But if nothing else, they could be reading them while they're getting their hair done or while they're waiting. And if they chose to, take them home because there would be a pile of them. That was a brilliant way of handling it. Because you had exactly the people who wanted to look beautiful reading a magazine about looking beautiful. And it was at the place where they're going to try to look beautiful. And they had time to read about looking beautiful. And they obviously had the interest in looking beautiful. That is a huge market. And so I remember one of my students asked the publisher, well, how has the recession hurt you? And she responded, what recession? I mean, the idea was so good that basically they were just growing leaps and bounds during the depth of the recession, the recent recession. So that's the nature of the ideal special interest magazine. Is you identify a very specific target advertising base with your target readership base. You put them together, and voila, you make lots of money. I still have a small ownership interest in a entertainment magazine back in America. And part of what they said is they were talking about the influence of advertisers. I would say on the magazine, the entertainment magazine that I still have some interest in, yeah, they have a lot of influence. And we don't care. Because they're the advertisers. And also, the advertisers are all entertainment advertisers. And our content is all entertainment content. And so if somebody comes in and says, I want to buy a full-page ad, and I want you to write a story about it, duh. Yeah, I mean, they bought a full-page ad. Their ad is about entertainment. Yeah, we're going to write a story about it. It just, so influence, yes. But it's in a special interest magazine like that, so what? In fact, when we bought it, when I was the publisher, when we bought it, the reason why we bought it was that their contents were terrible. They had terrible contents. Everybody picked up the magazine for the advertising. That's why they picked it up. Because all the advertising gave the information about the fun stuff to do in the city. And so that's why we bought it. We knew we could improve the contents, the readership contents, because the guy that started it wasn't a good journalist. But he was a really good businessman. And he had all sorts of advertising, and that's why people picked it up. He had a good front page, a colorful front page that drew people's attention, and after that, you picked it up for the advertising, not for the readership content, because his readership content was bad. So once we bought it, yeah, we definitely made deals with we were not an objective newspaper. We were a special interest magazine, and if somebody wanted to buy a full-page ad, you better believe we'd write a story for them. Because our readers were interested in that stuff anyway. It just correlated too evenly. So in our news magazine, we were running a news magazine at the same time. That the advertisers had no influence on. But for a special interest entertainment magazine, absolutely. You buy an ad, we'll run a story for you. Because it made sense. It made financial sense, and it's not like we're changing the world by running an entertainment story in our magazine. It's not any big deal. So that's an important, that trend towards special interest magazines is what exploded the market. Once people realized how much money they can make with a special interest magazine, suddenly thousands of magazines started being published. Local, ours is a local entertainment magazine. It's not a national one. It only focuses on our city, and that's it. And so it's all entertainment, all in our city, or in our region anyway, if not just exactly in we have quite a few advertisers from outside the city, actually, because they want to draw our population base to a city 100 miles away, or even sometimes 300 miles away. But it's still regional. It's not national by any means. And if the advertisers want to come advertise, of course, we're delighted to let them try to get our readers to go 300 miles to their entertainment venue. Okay, I'm going to stop this. And probably not going to. I'm going to show a couple of quick videos to make a couple more points, and I'm not going to record it onto my video. So they will also be placed on Moodle along with our presenters' videos today, and you should take a look at them. Okay, where are we here? Okay, this is, let me see here. So there's one here that I want to show you. Specifically about future magazines. Let me go into here. I think it's probably in here. Okay, this one. This is an online magazine. And this is important for you to understand how online publications can evolve. And this is several years old, so it's not like it's brand new. This is one of the things that I've tried to explain to you is that innovation doesn't become automatically accepted. So you have somebody innovate the technology, then you have to have somebody innovate how to use the technology. And so it's that second step that sometimes takes a long time. I talked about the sliced bread, 30 years before sliced bread became dominant in America. Between the invention of sliced bread, the bread slicer, and its adoption by society. The same thing happens in our technology. Even though things are moving very rapidly and we see things changing very rapidly, there's a lot of technology that has not been fully adopted yet by the public or by, in this case, the publications. So let me see, I need to get... Okay, so I'm going to show this one here. So again, I'm not going to record it into my own video. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to show much. A lot of this slideshow is redundant to what the other team showed. Anyway, there were a few pages I might want to jump to. But just in having a backdrop, I guess, let me, again, if you think about what those little videos that you just saw, now tell me that if our communications people like you are not innovative enough, that they're not going to kill books and newspapers and magazines as we know them today. A book doesn't have to be just a book anymore. I mean, it can be a sheet of paper, basically. You can actually, like I say, they can create a computer, in essence, tied to the cloud that's a piece of cardboard or a piece of paper. You can literally, it can be thin enough that you could put it in your pocket. Or it can be a little bigger if somebody wants it to be bigger. So it can be like the one you saw there at last. It looks a little bit more like a big newspaper. I doubt that, I think that would be inconvenient, although you can fold it. I think probably tabloid size might be the biggest one that I would go for if I were creating that newspaper. So more like 1117, a little more convenient, and make that foldable. Then it's basically 8.5 by 11 folded that you can carry with you. I think that's big enough. But now it's multimedia, like the first video that I showed you, where your advertisers now have something different. You can touch it and you can 360 it, or it turns into a video. One of the biggest mistakes that the print media are making right now is that they're still thinking print. They have to stop thinking print. The future is multimedia. It's not print. That doesn't mean it doesn't include words. Multimedia includes words. Some people want to read those words. But the future is multimedia. And so while I'm an old print journalist, I'm smart enough to know that anybody who's just thinking print is really stupid right now. They're really stupid. So a book may not be a book like you've seen it before. It may be a book with some video involved with it. So you're reading Harry Potter, and now suddenly you click a little button or whatever, and now you're seeing a video version of part of it to kind of help it capture your imagination, what the witches and so forth are looking like. And so it may not be a complete video, but you go ahead and make it multimedia. So you get the pleasure of reading it and imagining it, but they enhance it with just maybe a 15-second video embedded into that ebook. I actually probably created one of the first multimedia textbooks ever, and it didn't go anyplace because I didn't have the right contacts and probably wasn't done as professionally as it should have been done, but my crash course was the basis for that. Along with that, I had somewhere between 25 and 30 interviews with award-winning journalists. They were part of my textbook. And so in the complete textbook, part of the assignments was listen to this interview with this broadcast investigative reporter and write a story about it. Pretend that he is at your university giving a talk. now write a story about what he said in this interview. And so it was kind of what I'm doing with you now and having you write a story about what's happening in class. But I had these, they were just audio recordings in the 1980s, audio recordings of these interviews with, or speeches in some cases, of award-winning journalists. So my textbook was only 120 pages long, and a lot of that was activity, and some of the activities were tied to these 25 hours worth of audio tapes, so that you could listen and hear from one of the top professionals practice by writing a story about what he had to say, but embed it into your head that this is what an award winner does to win awards. This is how he thinks. This is what he does. I still have a lot of those recordings that I still use, but I'm going to create some new recordings and try to actually make my multimedia textbook, push it and try to get it published by a major publisher. Now that the technology has advanced, I want it to be more video-based than audio-based. But that idea, like I say, was something I thought of in 1980. But now it's right here at our fingertips. Now you add that to surface computing with e-paper, they call it, when you have paper that is actually connected to the internet. And so you can change your stories on one sheet of paper and still fold it up and put it in your pocket or whatever you want to do. The imagination can go crazy. The advertising for it can go crazy. Every newspaper should be selling video advertising. I started to talk that subject. Every newspaper should be selling video advertising on their website. And they're not doing it. They want to, and thus they've attracted, they haven't taken enough advantage of video. Therefore, nobody's going to their website. Advertising is not going to their website. And because advertising is not going to their website, they're dying. I think I showed you that chart where the amount of their online advertising just increased just tiny little bit compared to the great loss of their print advertising. It has come nowhere close to replacing the loss of their print advertising. But part of it is that they still think in print. The ads they put on their online pages are in print, basically. You don't go online to read their print ads. If you want effective advertising on your website, you put video ads in there, or maybe a print ad when you touch a button and then up comes the video. The newspaper that I used to work for and then competed against put itself, they had to change their whole newspaper to try to stop me. And they did. They stopped me. They did some stuff that was legally questionable, definitely ethically questionable to stop me. But if I'd started just a little bit later, I think they would not have succeeded. Because I tried to start it in 2006 before so many people went online and before it was as multimedia as it is now and so forth. If I'd started maybe even just 2008, 2009, I was already teaching overseas by then. But if I'd just waited a little bit longer, I think I'd have them where I wanted them because they're losing advertising left and right. They are becoming just a tiny little newspaper. And my idea was, only monthly in print and daily online, but go multimedia. But what I was going to say is that they refused to let their online advertisers link to their websites, to their own websites. And I thought, wow, that sure opened things up for us. So when we sold advertising, we sold it on the basis that you buy an online ad with us, or first off, you buy a print ad with us, we put it online, and we link it to your website. That makes it worth a lot more money. We didn't really have enough online readers, I don't think, in the world at that point in 2006 to make a difference against their kind of their monopolistic practices to put us out of business, including hiring our best ad salesmen and stuff like that, paying our ad salesmen a lot of money to leave us to go to them, and tactics like that. So. Like I said, I think that idea was just a little bit premature, but it demonstrates their vulnerability. They had to basically steal our advertising salesmen, steal a lot of our content ideas, steal a lot of stuff to try to stop us. And they're still they have made permanent changes. They were seen as a very liberal newspaper in a very conservative area. since I took them on and I was putting out a conservative publication, they realized that they were out of step with the community. So now they have a conservative opinion writer and stuff like that. They made some permanent changes to try to make sure that somebody like me didn't come along and upset their enterprise. So there are lots of opportunities out there, and people who understand the technology and understand the communications business. How do we make our money? What's the best advantage? How can we give our advertisers the best deal possible so they will come to us? Right now, the newspapers, like I said, they're not making them good deals. They're not including video. They're not, in some cases, not including links to their websites. They don't know how to drag those advertisers out of their print publication and put them into their online publication. They're not doing it, and that's why they're dying. They're also struggling with really trying to, how do I say this, making it more dialogic, making it more interactive with their readers. I think they have quite a way to go with that, and I think they're going to have to do more partnering. I can see, for example, I think I may have mentioned this before, but I have an idea for a competitor for Facebook. I think the ideal company to go work on it with would be somebody that a little bit more aligned with my ideologies, and that might be News Corp, who owns Fox TV and Wall Street Journal and so forth. But I can envision more of a news-based Facebook where they have a continued flow of their news stories going through their version of Facebook, but still make it interactive so people can argue with them and so forth. And they still, when you have your page, you establish your page, yes, some of that stuff is going to come through automatically. You won't be able to control some of their content, but that will make your timeline more interesting to more people because it'll just automatically include the latest news and so forth, but you still get to put your stuff on there too. So it's Facebook plus, what got me thinking about it was I was thinking about calling News First or something like that, because when I was first starting, I may have mentioned we had just a teletype machine that all the time was receiving this. We only had Reuters at the newspaper I was at, but it was just bringing on the Reuters stories all the time, and you could hear it typing. It actually types on paper as it comes over the line. So all day long as you're working, writing your stories and stuff, you're hearing this, and that made it kind of an interesting environment. But then when something big would happen, it'd start ringing a bell. And so it was important to go ding, 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 or something like that. And then if it was really important, go ding, 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 ding. And it was really, really important, go ding, 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 ding. And it was kind of the excitement. I got the news first. I heard those dings, and I pulled that story off of there, and I knew before anybody else that Richard Nixon was resigning because it was coming right off that wire. I, in my mind, exchanged that excitement that I had of being the first one to see the news to putting onto a Facebook-like interactive forum. But on top of that, don't stop with news. I'm thinking somebody like Fox then could start putting their entertainment on their Facebook, their version of Facebook. So now when they have, not all the time, but again, they would post certain things, including, it's time for whatever, America's Got Talent. I don't know what shows they control anymore, but America's Got Talent. There it is on your timeline. Oh yeah, I want to watch that. And so now you click on that, and you get to watch your favorite TV show. So it's intertwining entertainment, sports, programming, your news, hot off the press, so to speak, with your own content of whatever you want to put on there. I think a major organization could actually upset the Facebook apple cart, so to speak. But all of this is about competition. That's the open market. How do we upset Facebook? They're the big dogs out there now in social media. Google's actually bigger overall because of its control over multiple things, YouTube, but also just the search engines. They make a lot of money off their search engine control. So somebody has to upset their search engine. How do we do a search engine better than Google does? Not sure. There's actually a story that also could help, however, because there's a story that just came out that said that Google was trying to slant the recent presidential election. But with their Google searches, they were slanting the searches in favor of the liberals, trying to change the election. Well, now that could make, guess what, make the conservatives mad, and they might go to whoever else, Yahoo or whoever, to try to say, hey, we're not going to support Google anymore. So again, people with power sometimes abuse that power, and apparently Google has done that. That could be a big problem for them. If people realize that they are now being manipulated by Google, that could be a major problem. So lots of stuff going on with the technology is vital. Strategy is vital. How do we out-strategize that opposition? How do we use the technology and use the to get more advertising? How do we make our publication more interactive? How do we just follow the trends to compete with whoever it might be? As I said, I don't think the newspapers even understand who they're competing with. They're competing with each other, and they're going to all die together. They're all in the same rowboat that's ready to tip over. And the people, they haven't developed anything to compete with Google and Facebook. Thus, they're dead if they don't, because that's who's really still in advertising. So, anyway, we're out of time, but I want to just, just get you thinking about, the people who say that books will never die. There's two problems with that. First off, they don't understand the future technology. Secondly, they don't understand that at a certain point, the books will lose more and more market until it's no longer cost effective to bother to print them anymore. Where the cost of an ebook is so much less and so much easier to get, and now it's on paper, it's on e-paper. So now it makes more sense. It feels like, it's paper. It's on paper, for heaven's sake. So book is paper. Your publication, your e-paper, does the same thing, but it's one sheet instead of 800 sheets. So there's so many things going on in trying to strategize with the technology, with how to compete with other people, so forth. This is an amazing time to be alive. It'd be great to be part of your generation, knowing what's available and all the changes are going to happen. Just think about how the traditional media has been totally upset by people like Google and Facebook over the last 15 years. They've totally turned the world upside down. These big monopolistic media, these big conglomerates are totally in danger of being killed by these newcomers that dropped out of school and took off to start their own business and have no knowledge of what they're doing, but somehow they've taken over the world, just by some innovation and luck probably. But there's next generation. There's who will take on Facebook, who will take on Google. What can you do better than Google does? What can you do better than Facebook does? What can be your angle? It's out there. Somebody's going to do it. It might be you. If you're thinking about it and other people aren't thinking about it, it's more likely to be you. So think about it. Think about what our future is. This is an amazing time. And somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to take on Facebook. Somebody's going to take on Google. Somebody's going to do something better. Somebody's going to create even more astounding technology. But more important than establishing the technology, what do you do with it? That's what, like I said, we're seeing a 10-year gap here. All those videos are 10 years old, just about. I think all of them are about 10 years old. And it doesn't exist very much in the real world yet. That means people like you have to take a hold of the industry and make it happen in the real world. Because it's not the technology that's important. It's the application of the technology. How do you apply it to make money and to make a difference? That's the question. The technology is there. It's always 10 years or so behind the actual application of it. And here it comes, and it's up to you to figure out how to apply it and do these amazing things. So, okay, thank you. We do have, I sent out a message. Hopefully you all got it. You're going to have some of these participation quizzes. There's one up online already. Those questions are going to be in the database. When we get to the quarterly quiz, I may not even know what, you may all get a different test. One thing that Google allows me to do is say, for each test, draw 20 questions from my database. And I don't even know which questions they choose. And you may get a different set of questions than you, and so forth. They may get a different set of questions. So these questions, but they're all going to come from this set of questions that you're getting in your quizzes. So you're seeing the questions. I'm not giving the answers because I don't want to make it too easy. I don't want you to just memorize answers. I want you to understand what the questions are about and understand the answers. And yes, there's going to be some memory involved with that. Some of the questions, I think, even ones I put up today, are too specific, like dates or something like that. I don't really like those questions. I do want you to give me, this group gave me a lot of questions. Make sure you give me quite a few questions to choose from, and then I won't use stupid questions. I won't use questions that are like dates. Those shouldn't be in here. Maybe, maybe as was said, maybe a general date, a few dates. But if it's too specific, was it 1820 or 1830? Who cares? It's not something that matters. So I'd rather have the bigger questions like, the reasons for something happening. Those are better questions that I would rather use. But I need more questions then, or just by number, I need a certain number. So I know the first quiz I've used probably too many nitpicky, specific date sort of things that I don't like. But I needed to come up with some questions to get going with this. So, okay. Again, thank you. I will put this. I'll put this one sheet on there at least. Turn this off. I can't. People have asked, well, can you give me a quick comment on my story? And I don't want to do it unless I also give the same quick comment to other people. So I might do it for somebody, a few of these stories that people have thrown to me. But for example, this one I'm going to put online. So I'm giving one person some hint about their own story, but I'm giving all of you the same information. Because many of you have the same questions, will have the same problem. Oops, I'm going to have to come back up here again. Okay, so this is somebody's actual story, and I'm giving some comments on it, but to everybody. What's in red are my comments. And so you can kind of see what somebody's story sounds like. The story is, well, it has good grammar and so forth, but there are some basic things that they have neglected on the evaluation sheet that are important. And so I'm pointing out those things, and I'll put this on the Moodle site so you can get this evaluation that will be true for anybody. So, because most of you, these are the sort of questions that are the sort of problems all of you may be facing. So, for example, the lead, attitude is everything. We come here to learn from each other, learn from history, and create a better future for journalism together, said Ken Harvey, a journalism professor and from Scheiman. The requirement is one sentence in the lead. This is 2. It's still within the word limit. But I want you to understand that in 100 stories in American newspapers, and I think the Star would be included in this, from what I've seen from that, they simply don't have 2-sentence leads. And so if you want a job, you need to, in some cases, a matter of falling into the norm, doing what they expect of people. So I would still prefer that you go to one sentence, even though it's a very short beginning sentence, and even though it's under 35 words. Understand it's the norm. The norm is we go one sentence on that first paragraph. And so even though as an editor, I'd probably let it go. I'd say, yeah, this is short enough, this is good enough, I'm going to ignore that it's 2 sentences. But look at 100 stories, and I can provide, in another class I put up 30 pages 30 front pages of 33 newspapers, top newspapers in America, and you won't find 1-2 sentence. You'll see some longer, too long leads. They're too long, I think. But you won't find any 2-sentence leads. It's just not part of the culture, the norm. So you have to be careful of that and understand that. The second paragraph during China Professional Communication Conference held Dr. Harvey, as the key speaker, shared his work experience before he showed everyone the correct way to write a news report. After that, he discussed with journalism students about the history of culture and media. Okay, the problem with this is that there's too many abouts. There's not enough specifics. Try to get closer to the specifics. So you could say he showed everyone the correct way to write it. Did I write that? Oh, I was quoting them. Okay. Instead of that, give a little content of interest. That doesn't give enough content of interest. So it might be Harvey, who has more than 30 years of professional experience, explain that news stories should include and give some facts. What did I exactly say to make news stories better? Okay, so don't be about that gives you no detail. Be specific. So from that ... at the end there, tell me something specific. Said that should always start with a lead that attracts people's attention. Whatever. But something more specific than he talked about, or he told them how to write a news story that doesn't give any detail of interest. So try to be more specific. Avoid words and sentences with opinion. This one says the discussion benefited people in the conference a lot, inspired by Dr. Harvey. More and more students spoke. Be careful with that. There's some stories where you can be the observer, but I'm encouraging you. With ours, I would tell you to avoid it. First off, it doesn't give us a lot of. If you're going to be the observer, it would be like you're at a disaster zone and you're describing what you see. That's where you insert yourself as a writer. But this probably not enough benefit to, and plus it's your opinion. So it's not giving any detail as to why or how people benefited from it exactly, and it's still based on your personal opinion. Even though it's complimentary to me, that doesn't get you points. I want you to sound like a journalist. So avoid those sorts of opinions, and so that you might say the discussion benefited people, or that's what you don't say. How do you know this is true? How do you know it benefited everybody? To say this, you need need a source of attribution. So, for example, all of this could be in a quote from somebody, if it really was quoted by somebody. The discussion benefited people in the conference of law said so-and-so. Okay, now it's somebody's opinion, not your opinion. So we want to keep your opinion out of it. And so if you're quoting somebody else, that's okay. Be careful of the quotes. Some of these I'm not sure I'm so glad to see the creativity and passion from these students while they are brainstorming. Well, I think with this, I might have said, if this was about a presentation, I wouldn't have used the word brainstorming. So sometimes even one word off, if it's a really important word, that does make a difference. I would not have used the word brainstorming in this sentence, in this context. So the rest of it might be true. But if you have the most important word in the entire sentence off, something I would never say in this context, then I'm going to say, well, that's a bad quote. So you want direct quotes, but you need to be very careful, especially of the major words. If you get the verb wrong, I'm not going to notice. If you get a big word like brainstorming wrong, I'm going to notice that. I wouldn't say that in this context. So that's when I would notice it. Okay, don't be too vague. Avoid a student, presenter, explain. Who? Tell me who. It's your job to give me names. That's a newsman. A newsman has to get names. A newswoman, whatever. Newsperson has to get names of their sources. And so that's why I've asked the presenters here to be sure to give us their names on their front page and do it in order of their presentation, so you know who said what. And you can quote them by name, not by a student presenter. That's That's not newsworthy. That's not the right way of doing it as a news person. One of the big requirements is to get people's names. Don't use the word concluded at the end of the conference. You know immediately when you say that, you're not writing an inverted pyramid. Inverted pyramid is the most important stuff first. And so we never say at the end of the conference, it would be very rare, let me put it that way, very rare to say, concluded at the end of the conference, whatever, those sorts of words, because that suggests a chronological order, not an order of importance. And so as news people, we even if we do end up writing somewhat chronologically, we have to have a really big incentive to admit to the reader that we just wrote chronologically. This isn't necessary. It's not necessary to say that I said it at the end of the conference. So there's no reason to put the chronology into this. So avoid anything that's chronological. Don't say first speaker, second speaker, third speaker. Don't say that, because that's not journalistic. That defies the inverted pyramid logic. And so it sounds amateurish to say anything that puts a chronology to it, unless it is, like say, a crime story, a sports story, something that obviously comes to a conclusion. Even then, you'd be very careful how you worded it. You want to sound professional, and when you start putting too much chronology into the story, that's not professional. So avoid any allusion to chronology at all, such as this one. Now, like I said, the writing of this is good. If everybody writes this well, that's wonderful. As far as the use of the words and the grammar and everything. But even this person, with their excellent English, hasn't quite grasped the idea of news writing. And so that's what I want to teach you. You won't be doing it perfectly the first time. I'm going to give you feedback, and so you can do it better the next time. And then when you take a news writing course, you're going to do better in your news writing course, because I've helped introduce you to the concepts of news writing. And that's my goal in having these assignments. Okay? Any questions on that? So I'll put this up so you can read it more carefully. So if anybody sends me one, expect it could end up on Moodle. So I'm not going to give people individual feedback that I don't give to everybody, basically. I can't give everybody individual feedback. I can't do it. So any feedback I give is going to end up on Moodle or in this classroom showing you what people did wrong. I'm eliminating the names, obviously, so that you can learn from the mistakes. That person will learn, and hopefully you are learning also, of how to make your stories a little bit better. Okay? Any questions on that? Okay, well, gradually we'll become better news writers, and that's, I hope, maybe the most important thing you get out of this class is how to write a news story, because that's the most benefit to your future than everything else we're learning, or at least a lot of it. Okay, now I'm done. Sorry.